You have a lot of wealthy people in the Bible. The problem is not having it and using it. The problem is identifying with it. When Jesus says you can serve two masters. And then he's clear, you can serve God and you can serve money. So the concept over there is like, how do you identify this wealth with? Do you live for it? Or you have it so you can live? You know? And the moment you manage to create that detachment, yeah, I have stuff, but I'm not this stuff. You know, and if I live to another part of the world without all of it and have to start from scratch, yeah, I'm still me. I'm going to make, I made it happen over here, I'm going to make it happen over there. I had a good time with this stuff. Now I'm going to get some new stuff over there and have a good time again. Not everybody is capable of that. That's why I'm saying, like, during that war, a lot of people were dying, literally just giving up on life because they lost all of the stuff they had. You know? That's kind of the idea. That's a trap you don't want to get into. You know? But what we were talking about, so people give up on themselves in many ways. Like the moment you say, I am who I am, you're giving up on yourself. You kind of come up to terms with, well, let's say, I am a procrastinator. The moment you say that, you identify with it. Maybe you see it as a wrong thing, but not necessarily because you identify with it. Very often people don't do anything about it. Or if they're going to do anything about it, they leave it for tomorrow. It's kind of like that. Yeah. Or I'm a short fuse. You know, when Philip mentioned marriage, like that thing kind of clicked in my mind. I'm a short fuse. You know, that's the way I am. You know. No, you're not. You just don't have patience to deal with people or with things, whatever, you know. You choose to be a short fuse. When you say, I choose to be a short fuse, at least you're honest with yourself. Saying I'm a short fuse actually says, I don't want to work on myself, on becoming more patient. That's what it says. So that's kind of the idea where Paul says, I do not consider that I have it made it yet. He says, I am a work in progress in all of the areas of my life and in my spiritual experience. And he was not good where he was. He was not happy where he was. That's why, what's the next thing he says? By the way, we are reading Philippians chapter 3, verses 13 and 14. And we are talking about one thing that everyone should do, bless you, to improve their spiritual experience. And Paul talks about that over here. So, he says, but one thing I do. And then first step of this one thing is, he says, I'm forgetting what lies behind. How do you guys understand that statement? I forget what lies behind.
It's like, what's it called? It was like one of the first habits that I judged you guys for. You were saying how the past only hurts if you let it.
Okay.
Because it has to stay behind you. You can't let that thing catch up to you. It's like another like quote I heard. It's like the rear view mirror is smaller than the windshield for a reason.
Yeah.
That's back there.
Yeah. I like that. Okay, yeah. So in one way you want to leave the past behind because you don't want it to affect your present and
Future. What else? How else do you guys understand that?
Do you see any other aspects of forgetting what lies behind?
It's like, I don't know, traumatic experiences like you might have experienced shouldn't define you.
Okay, that's also an interesting thing. Trauma. Yes. Trauma is something that you want to leave behind. How does trauma like trauma 20 years ago can affect your present time?
It might affect your habits. Like it might affect your habits or like how you interact with people.
No, but here's the thing. It happened 20 years ago. How old are you? What did you say?
26.
Do you remember where were you on April 6th, 20 years ago?
No, but
Do you remember anything from when you were 6?
no, I remember when I was 7. That's pretty much where my memories start coming in. But before that, not really.
No, okay, I'm just taking that as an example. The reason why is because people often have these past traumas from their childhood, not because not because the events that cause those traumas are real, but because they keep reliving them again and again and again. And they are real in your mind, and they then have like real life effects on who you are right now. So leaving these things behind, like Paul says, forgetting.
Now, one interesting thing about the word that he uses here, he is not talking about forgetfulness. The word actually means more like dismissing. Like, I'm not putting my attention to these things anymore. So he did not forget, like what happened before, what happened in his past. And frankly, we don't forget, we remember things. But he learned to dismiss them. He learned not to give them any value anymore. Now, what's wrong with dwelling on the past? Let's talk a little bit more about that. What's wrong about dwelling on the past? You can learn from your past, right? The ones who forget past are doomed to repeat the same mistakes that hurt them in it, right? So you don't want to forget the past. You don't want to forget the lessons of the past. But what's wrong about dwelling on it?
You can't focus on the future.
Say again?
You can't focus on the present. You can't see the future.
Okay, yeah, in a way, you can, it takes your focus away from the present and from building the future. Okay, cool, all right, yeah, that's right. What else?
You're allowing that same energy that in the past to be in your present, and it's just gonna cycle to your future.
Elaborate.
If you're focusing on the past, the same past energy that gave you that same result is transitioning to your present, which will transition to your future, which is going to make your future because...
Thank you very much, that makes sense. If you think in the same way that you used to think before, you can't expect new things to happen.
It's going to keep it.
You're gonna keep repeating the same things, yeah.
Also, you're just identifying with like a past self, you know what I mean? So like, let's say like now I'm more confident, but then
Now what?
Like now I'm more confident than like let's say a year ago. But like let's say I'm reliving or dwelling in the past of who I once was. So then I'm like just making myself more timid or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I see it.
I remember. So he used to be so easily intimidated. Like Josh, I just had to yell. But I remember the change. I remember like a couple of years back when kind of you start evolving. You know, it was kind of cool to witness that. But that's true. Like you go back and you relive those moments of intimidation by somebody who was really, for whatever reason, negatively affecting you. Yeah, it's very easy to kind of feel again, like, you know, to have those, and dwelling on it again and again is gonna recreate yourself from back then. Yeah. Okay, these are the bad things from the past
That we should not pay attention to. Now let me ask you this. What are the good things from the past that you should forget?
Good things you should forget?
Yeah, what are the good things from the past that you should dismiss and not give your attention to? This is the odd question, I know.
Yeah, it's like the person that wins a championship or whatever. And now all the future is based on that reputation or that past glory, right? Instead of pursuing and achieving new things, you are living in the past.
Thank you very much. Glory days. Is it Bruce Springsteen, that song? Glory days. Yeah. That's a perfect example, yeah.
All because something good happened in the past doesn't mean it was meant for you. It was an experience and it was good, but that moment's gone, and it's good to have good experiences in the past, but you move on to have better experiences in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. What else? What else crosses your mind?
No, that's exactly the same thing. Glory days, like in the group text with Eric, when I said, let's go back to our glory days of singing. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's not good to dwell on that. Yeah. Like, yes, those days are good. We sang very well. And of course, like, it was worth it, but it's not good to dwell in the past on that. Yeah. So, yeah, that was good.
It's one thing that happens very often, like when we think even of
These amazing experiences that we had, is romanticizing, you know. It's and you see that it's a cool example in the Bible when you have God sends Moses to take his people out of Egypt because for 400 years they were miserable slaves. Actually, not for all of those years, but this last generation they were slaves. They were literally just slaving away for the Egyptians. And God tells them, okay, it's time. And they were crying. Bible says they were crying to God. And then God says, okay, they're crying to me, let me send them a savior. And he sends Moses to get them out. So they leave Egypt, and now they are traveling to the promised land. And what do they think of Egypt? Do you remember? What were their thoughts on Egypt at the time?
Yeah, when they're struggling in the rest of the day, but we had a few things, good things over
Yeah.
there.
We had such a good time in Egypt. You guys remember all of the food and watermelons and onions and good stuff. We left all of this good stuff behind. And they were slaves. They were literally, not just they were slaves, but they were like constantly, they were victims to genocide, where they would be, like Egyptians were killing their male offspring, and it was just awful. They had no freedom, they had no rights, they had no ownership of anything. But they look back and like, those were the good days. We tend to romanticize about past. Even these cool, amazing achievements that we did, yeah, they were great at the time, but they don't reflect anymore who you are. Nevertheless, should you go back and reminisce on those things, they keep you stuck in that mode of, oh my goodness, if I could just do this again, you know? But we can't, you know? So we evolve. We evolve, we grow out of it. And that's what Paul says, that's what he means when he says forgetting what lies behind. Because here's the thing, what did Paul have to forget? What were the bad things that he had to forget about his past? What do you remember about Paul? No, exactly. Actually, at the time he was Saul before he changed his name. He was a Christian hunter. He was actually persecuting Christians, imprisoning them, killing them, separating families. A lot of them, Paul was a proud Christian killer before Jesus met him and blinded him for 3 days and told him, Paul, leave me alone, stop persecuting me seriously. And he's like, who are you, Lord? Well, it's me, Jesus. And then he's like, what have I done? Paul, this is a cool thing about him. So he has these 3 days of his personal dark night where he is trying to understand where did he go wrong. And after those 3 days of blindness where he's just praying by himself, God sends a Christian to baptize him. And I forgot his name, but this guy, God tells him, okay, go find Saul. He's going to be over there. What's his name? Ananias, thank you. So Ananias, go and find Saul and you will baptize him. And Ananias freaks out, are you kidding me? He's going to kill me. He's a murderer. Don't you worry about that. You just do what I tell you. So he finds him, he's baptized, his eyes are open, and Saul now starts going around preaching about Jesus. And what do Christians do? They run away. He came up with some new plot how to get us all together, I guess, and kill us all at the same time or whatever. You know, and they didn't trust him. Like, you killed my mom. You separated me from my family. I don't even know where they are. You know, like, there was a lot of grudge on Paul. And I can just imagine how much guilt he was carrying around with all he did. And people recognize him like, I know who you are. I used to be that way. No, I don't believe you. You know? So he had a lot of bad, a lot of trauma to leave behind, a lot of guilt to leave behind. What are the good things that Paul had to leave behind?
Probably the prestige, education.
All of his life he devoted to learning about God. He was one of the top Pharisee scholars of his time. He had the prestige. Yeah, he was famous. He was picked out of everybody to do what he did. He volunteered as well. But the thing about him, like who he was like the peak of the social cream of his time. Like he was coveted by other people all the time. Like, oh, I wish I was like, why aren't you like Saul? Look at him. Like this is like that, you know, that mother's guilt, you know, to her son. You should look up to him and so on. And he decides to kind of just leave it all behind. He decides to forget about the good and the bad for one reason only. Look at this. Somebody read verse 14.
Now, can you do it again, but like volume to 80%?
I press on to reach the end of the race and receive the heavenly prize for which God, through Christ Jesus, is calling us.
Thank you very much.
Gosh, dang.
You okay?
Yeah, I should be good. I had something stuck in. I'm not doing
I hope you're not spreading viruses around
it.
here.
No, that's what I'm going for.
That's
Like this.
good.
Yeah.
That's not gonna help. That's okay. Oh, there's
Yeah, I'm a go.
yeah.
We'll just go upstairs.
Yeah.
I'm gonna listen from right there.
Just sit in your truck and open the live stream. Like so he says, I'm forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead. I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of Jesus Christ. Now, how do you know where to go? How do you know where to go? Paul says over here, I'm forgetting what lies behind. This is one thing that I do. I'm forgetting what lies behind and I'm pressing forward toward this goal. Now, in the spiritual context of your lives, guys, how do you know where to go? How do you recognize the right path to follow?
I've always followed the more difficult path.
How do you know that was the right path? Before you took the first step, how did you know this is the right way to go?
Because I can feel inside that if the more difficult path is always the right one. Because I feel like the devil's always like, here it's easy, here it's easy. So anything that's more difficult, it's more harder to achieve, everything's gonna be more difficult. Anything that's worth doing is gonna be difficult.
But you felt this was the right way to do.
Like you can feel your inner thoughts, right? And when you feel those inner thoughts, when you know you're doing something wrong, when you know when you're doing something right, when you know that even though it's difficult, you still have to do it. So I push towards, I always do what's more difficult.
Okay.
That obviously makes sense.
Okay.
So
I understand. Okay, thank you. Well, that's the way you do it. You know who was that? Like Bill Gates says, I always try to hire
lazy people to do the hard work, to do the complicated tasks, because they're going to always find a way to do it in the easiest way possible. So not everybody is kind of drawn to hard work. It works for you, okay. But interesting thing that you said is like you knew this was the right way to go. You sensed that this is the way that things should be done. How about the rest of you? Like for me, it's always like you have to have some kind of point up front. Like one thing, as I was learning to fly, once you're in the air, everything is very broad, and frankly, when you're like at like 2,500 feet above ground, you have a sense that you're just floating. You don't really feel much movement. You're kind of like right there. That's kind of it. It's you don't have like you watch the Top Gun. You don't get that sense or like speed and rushing. No, like it's actually like, this is cool. Once you kind of trim the airplane and you set everything, the airplane pretty much flies by itself. You don't have to do anything unless you want to change the course. So you kind of just like take photos, chat, you look around, and then there is a moment. Landing is the scariest thing for me. Landing is seriously scary. Like it has to be done right, and you can do it wrong only one time. It's kind of like that. So the instructor, he keeps telling me, like, look at the numbers. Always look at the numbers. And every runway, on both ends of the runway starts with the gigantic numbers. 16, 34, 29, depending on how it's oriented in comparison to north, south, east, west. But essentially he tells me, you look at the number and you always aim your airplane to the number. And it's seriously like, first time when I started flying and when he does it, like, how do you know, you know? But now, when my eyes are kind of right on the number, and now I already know where I need to keep the number as I'm pushing the airplane to go down, it's just like, I know where I'm going. Like, this is the right place to go. This is the place where I need to. And then, as long as you keep the number right there, once you're above the runway, you're kind of right in the right place to land. And the wheels touch the ground. Oh my goodness. But in the same way, when we are talking about pushing forward in your spiritual growth, in who you are, not who you are as a businessman, who you are as a mechanic, who you are, not in that sense, but in who you are in your essence. What do you put your eyes on? Where is the focus of where you want to be in your spiritual growth? How do you know? So, yeah, we discussed this, forgetting what lies behind. It's doable. But what do you go to now? Okay.
Maybe because of the way my mom started talking to me about religious matters, she kept it very simple.
Okay.
So I have always just keep it simple. If Jesus is telling me he's the way and the truth and the life, and he has like a bunch of arrows pointing at himself, right, through the Bible, it's always been very easy for me that what I need is to be as close as possible to him. And the best way is to follow his example of integrity and kindness. And as long as I'm keeping myself being that way, right? Being motivated by him and inspired by him, not because I am this way, no, but because of him. Mm-hmm. As long as I do it for him, I know I'm getting closer to him. And that's my point. My point to follow.
Paul, the verse that you read pretty much, he even says that. He says, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. And his idea is, like, I see Jesus up ahead. Like, that's who I want to be.
that's how I want to look like. And he says, like, I'm not there yet. Like, after years of going towards there is still room to improve. But that is my goal. I had an interesting talk with my sister last week. We were talking about like the whole political situation with the refugees right now, and how much animosity there is in this country towards them, even though they really have no fault of their own. They were offered an opportunity, they took it, and right now they're here trying to figure things out, and they don't have to jump through the hoops that all the rest of us had to deal with. And then everybody is looking at them, you know. Anyways, she was frustrated with that because she lives in Chicago, and they also have quite a bit of a refugee situation over there. And she's an immigrant as well, and she understands the pain of going through these processes, and she's trying to help, to be part of the group that helps. But she says, it's interesting, like Serbian people are weird. Like she says, anytime she goes to church is filled with immigrants. Some immigrated 5 years ago, some immigrated 50 years ago. But pretty much the majority of the church is going to be the immigrants. And he says all of them are bashing on these people. How they're intruders, they're this, they're that, they're illegally doing things and so on. And she's frustrated with it. She's like, I always get in an argument with somebody. I always get in a fight when I go to church because they have this attitude. How can they have this attitude? And now she's frustrated. And I tried telling her, listen, the way you look at it, yeah, you might be right. I'm not arguing that. Frankly, I agree with you. But you can't be frustrated with this. You have to approach it. You can't approach this with frustration. And she's like, well, if you're not frustrated with it, then you're indifferent, then you don't care. And I'm like, no, that's not the point. Here's the thing. Did Jesus approach things with frustration? He didn't. Every single time, whatever was happening, he would approach things with love and compassion. Not just the refugees who needed help, but the people in your church that you're getting in fight with, they need help as well, because they are misguided. And you literally have to allow yourself in every single moment to approach whatever comes your way, good, bad, and the ugly, with love and compassion. Because that's what Jesus did. And that's pretty much what you said. You know, we have Jesus as a blueprint of this is how I want to look like. And anytime anything frustrates me, or I judge people, or I look at them and like, oh, look at them, this and that, I realize this is not how Jesus would look at them. So I have to think differently. I have to act differently. And the work that Paul talks about over here is like, I need to be a better person, because that reflects my spirituality the best. The way I treat others reflects my spirituality. The way my outlook on life is, positive or negative, frustrating or relaxing, or compassionate or angry, reflects my spirituality. All of these, and I'm not talking about other people, what will other people say, but it's a mirror for you to see where you are on this path that Paul is talking about. Yeah, leave things behind, but make sure that as you're going forward, your focus is on looking like Jesus. Looking like Jesus, yeah. Treating people the way he did, being part of the situations where he was. Otherwise, you can get sidetracked real easy. You know, you can get sidetracked into a political Jesus. We have so many millions of people in this country rooting for a political Jesus who is going to support this president and condemn the other. Or you have a social Jesus, you know, who is going to help everybody, you know, and make sure that all of us are blessed with fish and bread. But that's not where Jesus stopped. What did you do?
So what lies ahead is growth, is new you, is better you. So when I ask you right now, don't worry about it, that's fine. I think we're almost done anyways. Let me ask you this last question. So when I ask you, what is one thing that you think you should do better in life? And what is one thing that in the course of, let's say, next 3 months, you're going to improve in your life? Can you tell it to me? I'm not asking you to tell it to me, but do you have it in your mind right now? It's there, right? So that is the next step to this goal. You know, I mean, we always talk about this idealistic big picture of like we're going to reach this and that, but no, this is the first step. This is who I am right now. In 3 months, I'm going to be better in this. And now you put all your focus on that, because once you get there, you will realize, okay, this is where I'm going ahead. So I want to challenge you guys to do this one thing. Don't be trapped by the past, the good and the bad, but the present moment. See what part of Jesus are you going to be tomorrow? Where are you going to be better tomorrow? How are you going to be a better person, better character, better Christian, better spiritual being tomorrow? And then aim for that. Make sense? Any questions? Excellent. All right. Let's have a prayer, and we can close for today. Who would like to pray?
Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity of getting together, discussing your word, and trying to learn. And please give us the wisdom and the strength to apply what we have discussed today. Bless every one of us and our loved ones wherever they are. In Jesus' name we pray. Thank you.
You're teaching me with my imperfections, reaching me